Well, hello, and welcome to this very special episode of our show, Let's Talk Board Games. This is the sort of semi-belated episode 23 for where we've got the magnificent, the one, the only, Ben Burns, Daddy Ben, and all his many other nicknames that I'm sure there are out there from the Pandemonium Institute to talk about Blood on the Clocktower. I think it's probably fair to say the relatively new social deduction game that is taking the internet and the world by storm.
Well, I certainly hope so.
Well, I don't know, £500,000 or dollar Kickstarter is certainly a good way to go.
It's not bad, yeah. I think we were very lucky in that regard.
So I think we can probably go straight in here and say, Ben, tell us about Blood on the Clocktower.
Okay, well, Blood on the Clocktower is a supernatural murder mystery social deduction game. It's akin to your werewolves and your Town of Salem's of the world, but it has some key and we think very important differences. So, first of all, there's no elimination. When you die, your role's not revealed. You still take part in discussion. You still close your eyes at night. You still win or lose with your team. And players can become poisoned or drunk during the course of the game, in which case their abilities won't work properly. So if you're a role that learns information in the night, the GM, the storyteller, will wake you up and lie to you and feed you false information. And the combination of those two things, the fact that dead evil players can bluff from beyond the grave and dead good players can stay a part of the discussion, and the fact that the evil team can mess with information and cause people to get false information, creates this kind of dynamic GM role that's a little bit dungeon master and a little bit referee. And we think it kind of shakes things up to the point where it puts the social back in social deduction.
Certainly from our experiences of playing it, I say we found Blood on the Clocktower from No Rolls Bard's lovely episodes that you've done with them. I got to ask, how did you get involved with those guys?
So weirdly, many of you are probably aware that Adam Blampier is like a bit of a celebrity. He's quite famous on YouTube and stuff, but I had no idea. So in the summer of, it'll be either 2018 or 2019, I forget which, the summer that we kickstarted the game, I think 2019. No, 2000. Do you know what? One of those summers, I went down to London to run games at a now sadly defunct board game place called Cakes and Ladders. It was a really cool venue. The board game cafe was on a double-decker bus, but we used to play outside of this bus in a little courtyard. And Adam came down and played Blood on the Clocktower in its infancy, but I had no idea at the time that he was some sort of celebrity. And then fast forward a few years, and he's on this guy called Adam is on Twitter saying that he likes Blood on the Clocktower, and he's a YouTuber. I should probably get in touch with him and see. If maybe I can run a game for his YouTube channel. So I contacted him and said, "Hey, I see you like Blood on the Clocktower. Do you want me to come and run a game for your channel?" And he was like, "Oh, hi, Ben." And I'm like, "Hang on a minute. What? You know me? Yeah. I had you ran a game for me at Cakes and Ladders." He said, "I'd love to put it on our channel, but I don't think it's doable. It's too fiddly." So I was like, "I've been running this on a stream for ages. I'll tell you exactly how to do it. You just get some players together. I'll come and run it for you. You can film it and put it on your YouTube channel." But at the time, none of us expected that it would be such a big deal. We didn't expect every episode would get tens of thousands of views and it'd have hundreds of comments. We just thought, hey, let's do this. It'll be a bit of fun. And here we are, like 8 million episodes down the line, and an in-person game, and a successfully kickstarted in-person series. And it's like, it's probably the most well-known thing that I've ever done, but at the time we had no idea that was going to be the case.
So some of our viewers might be familiar with sorry if this is a swear word, the game Werewolf or One Night Werewolf. How would you say, Ben, that Blood on the Clocktower would differ from those games?
I mean, I don't want to sort of stand here and badmouth Werewolf, because that's how we started off playing Werewolf, right? That's most of us who are into this genre started off playing Werewolf. And Werewolf's awesome, but I think Werewolf is a bit rudimentary. There's not really that much social. It's mostly deduction. Yeah, if you've got 10 living players and no one's dead yet, on that very first day of the game, or in that moment when you start playing, you don't know what anyone is, and there is a social element. But when someone dies, their role is revealed. There's no more social then. If they're a werewolf, then you can assume that everything that they've said was to try and mislead you. And if they're a good guy, you can assume that everything that they've said is true, because why would they lie if they're good? And immediately it's just deduction. There's no more social. And I think that by having dead players continue to participate, having dead players' roles not revealed, and having that little bit of doubt there that your info might have been poisoned by an evil player, I think that makes it equal parts social and equal parts deduction. Because in my opinion, most of the social deduction genre is more or less just deduction.
I say little bits social, but mostly deduction. Yeah, I definitely agree with that one. I certainly think for me the big difference for me is that, as you say, it's that the not done definitely is not the end. I said, player elimination is probably one of my biggest pet peeves with a lot of games.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of get it. It works in some instances when the game is like quick fire. There's a lot of cool games that do have an elimination mechanic. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, like Cash and Guns, I think is a great example of a game where you can get eliminated in that, but the rounds are so quick and frenetic, and you're more or less straight back into another game again. But a game of like 15-player werewolf, if you die on night one, you're just sipping your beer and watching your friends play for an hour while you twiddle your thumbs and like play around on Reddit on your phone or whatever. And that's, some people don't mind that, but I want to play. If I'm coming somewhere, I want to play the game for the whole of the time that everyone's playing it. And I think most of us enthusiasts feel similarly.
Yeah,
so
which brings us into a good question from one of the commenters. Obviously, when you do your Twitch streams, you mix it up. You do player perspective and storytelling. You ever got any plans for the MRB crew to fly solo on their storytelling and play with them instead?
It's actually it was supposed to already happen. As it happens. Right. So before we did the in-person Blood on the Clocktower, the plan was that the last online one that we did of what is now last season, that was going to be the last one ever. We were like, this is going well, but it's time that we stop doing this now while it's still doing well. And so the plan was that I was going to play and someone else was going to storytell. But that message didn't get to me until a few days we were supposed to record it. By some sort of mistake, I wasn't informed that I was responsible for finding another storyteller. So with a few days to go, I scrambled and tried to find, and I asked Ed and I asked Adam and a bunch of other guys who some of you might know from our streams who are more than capable of doing it, but none of them could make it. And so we just conceded that I would be running it and we'd never get to see that Daddy Ben Plays game. But now that when the in-person game was such a huge success, Adam was like, we are definitely not stopping doing these. So I think that's very much on the cards, and I will honestly be very surprised if that doesn't happen at some point before this year is out.
Definitely. So from lovely Brad from one of those servers, extolling your virtues as a player there.
Well, thank you. I'm actually rubbish at Blood on the Clocktower. You're too kind. I'm a bit of a thicko, me. And for our American viewers, that means dumb over in the UK. It doesn't mean attractive. But I'm not that smart. I think I'm pretty good at looking someone in the eye and telling whether or not they're lying to me. But that's instinct. When it comes to like building worlds, as they call it, I am awful at it. Just absolutely terrible.
I don't know. I think you can hold your own. I think you're so used to playing with Ed, who the galaxy brain himself, who just looks at a grid and suddenly the world. I swear he's clairvoyant when you watch him on stream. It's just like how he can just have two chats and one bit of information in town, and suddenly he's got the world.
Yeah, Ed's very good at that. Jams is very good at that. I think if I am good, it's not through any like natural ability. I think if you try and open a door by slamming your face into it, as if you slam it enough times, the door will probably open. And I think that's probably a metaphor for my ability at playing Blood on the Clocktower.
So how did the initial concept start out, like prior to actually launching it on Kickstarter? And how does that then vary from the final product, as it were?
So the game's designer, Steve, he actually, as he told it to me, was that he was invited to a games night around a mate's house, and they were playing Werewolf, and he'd never played it before, and he sat down to play. Roles were handed out. He was given a villager role. Oh, okay, I've got no ability, but that's fine. And then on night one, he died, and then he just sat there and watched everyone else play. And he watched everyone play Werewolf and thought, this is great. There's some real potential here, but surely there is a way that we can improve this by ensuring that everyone gets to play all the time without unbalancing it. So Steve's initial design of Blood on the Clocktower actually had a werewolf or some werewolves and a bunch of good guys. And the logo, the icon that you now see for the lycanthrope, if you've got a Kickstarter edition of the box, was actually the original icon for Steve's werewolf in those very, very early days. But he quickly started to realize, I imagine, that the fact that players are eliminated is a balancing mechanic in Werewolf, right? If you just played Werewolf, exactly the rules that it usually comes with, but you just didn't eliminate anyone, then Evil would get absolutely smashed to pieces because, the good guys would just continue to talk from beyond the grave. And so in Werewolf, that is dealt with by A, having people eliminated, and B, having a bunch of villagers with no ability soak up a large portion of the good team. Whereas in Blood on the Clocktower, the balancing mechanic for that is outsiders, good characters that are detrimental to the good team. So while they're playing for the good team and they're working with the good team, in terms of their ability, they're almost kind of sort of on the evil team, but not really.
Yeah, passive effects that happen to give evil a nudge.
Yes.
Yeah. I was like, Steve mentioned him. He's obviously in Oz. One of the viewers is asking, you ever managed to get out to go and see them?
I haven't. No. In fact, Ed and myself had a chat about this not too long ago. Evan every year runs a board. This is how different a world it is out there to the UK. Every year, Evan runs a board game convention in his house, or he did at least. I presume his house must be very large. I don't know, but Ed and myself thought it'd be funny if we bought a couple of tickets using pseudonyms and then flew over there and just showed up at his house. So it's something that we wouldn't mind doing at some point. I would love to go see Australia. Obviously, the Aussies are culturally quite similar to us Brits in a lot of senses. They've got a lot of slang in common with us. They like fish and chips and all that. But yeah, I wouldn't mind going out there. But unfortunately, I haven't yet. But I have had the opportunity to travel as part of Blood on the Clocktower. I'm going to be at Shucks in Vancouver in September. And it looks like I might be going to a convention in Turkey, so I'm not complaining. I get to broaden my horizons a bit.
Yeah. So, with them starting off in Australia, obviously, with Steve, how did you get involved with the Pandemonium in the first place?
So, I used to be the manager of a board game cafe in my home city of Derby called Game Night. And I was also, while I was managing that place, I was working after hours as a games journalist. And because both of those things kind of coincided, they sometimes cross lines, I ended up going to the UK Games Expo in, I think, 2018 with the guys that I worked at Game Night with, and also as a games journalist. And one of our favourite things to do at Game Night after hours was to lock all the doors. Anyone who's still around, hey, do you want to stay for a lock-in? We're going to play some social deduction games. We'll all have a beer and we'll play Werewolf or Deception, Murder in Hong Kong, or one of those, any of a number of social deduction games. So we love the genre, is what I'm saying. And so when I learned that there was going to be this new social deduction game at the UK Games Expo, where you die but you still get to play, and the GM can lie to people, and I was like, oh my god, this is such an amazing idea. Like, it must be awful because there's no way that can work. So I just kept coming back over and over again for that whole weekend to play Blood on the Clocktower. And I just kept fawning over Evan at the time who was there, and we that
one didn't do that.
It's surprisingly addictive.
But yeah, at the end of the weekend, I said, "Hey, I want to get more involved. This game's amazing. How can I get involved?" And they said, "Well, you live in the middle of England and you're a journalist who goes to conventions. Do you just want to be our guy in the UK? We'll send you a preview copy, a prototype, and you can, take it with you and run games and do a bit of playtesting. So I was obviously like, hell yeah, I'll have a free copy of your awesome game. And then when they kickstarted it and asked for 60,000 and got 600,000, I was like, I think it's probably time I had a piece of that pie. So I basically offered my services as a community manager, and they said, yeah, and here I am, all these years later, talking about it on a stream. It's very surreal.
Yeah.
Well, so talk to us. I was going to say, talk to us about a typical game of Blood on the Clocktower. How does it run, first of all, in an in-person game, let's say?
So an in-person game of Blood on the Clocktower is played with the players sitting in a circle. This can be, in your living room with armchairs and sofas or whatever, or you can all sit on a plastic chair, or if you want, you can sit on the ground in a circle. But all the players are in a circle, and there's nothing in between them except for the game's board, the town square, which is placed on the floor. And when the game begins, all of the players will be handed a role. Most of them will be good characters. A small number of them will be evil characters. And then everyone closes their eyes, and the guy running the game steps into the middle of the circle and individually wakes up each player by tapping them on the shoulder to give them whatever information or perform whatever function their ability has. That's the night phase of the game. And then once all of that's been done, the storyteller tells the players to open their eyes. And this is the day phase of the game. And the players will get up and have conversations and chat with one another. What makes this quite different to a lot of other social deduction games, though, is that you're encouraged to have private conversations. You don't have to stay exactly where you are, sat in the circle. You can stand up, move around, you can whisper to people, you can go for private chats, form little factions. And so it's a much more, I would say, it's a much more fluid social deduction game than your secret Hitlers and your werewolves of the world. You don't remain in your seat, and therefore you don't remain in the physical and mechanical position that you're in for the entire game. And I think that's manifested to some degree in the fact that good players will always lie in this game. It's quite rare, I think, in a lot of social deduction games. Just if someone lies, you tend to assume that they're evil, but that's not the case in Blood on the Clocktower because of that sort of social fluidity that you get with the game. Sorry, I'm going off on tangents here. I always do this. So I'm like your granddad or something, just telling my war stories.
No, I definitely agree with the good players lying. It's almost become a meme for me now in our social group play that you just do anything I say day one, you just completely disregard.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, the players that are consistent are probably evil, right? Because they've decided on a story at the beginning of the game and they're going to stick to it come hell or high water. Whereas the good players are more than happy to just bat back and forth between various lies before they decide to come out with the truth.
Yeah. So get my words out. Talking about in-person games, there's obviously some roles that interact with how people nominate and votes that they do. And how do you keep track of that as a storyteller?
I'm glad you asked. You're good at this. You're prompting me for all the advertisements. So, Blood on the Clocktower. I wish I had a copy with me, actually, but I'm currently in the process of moving house, which is why my shelf is bare. But Blood on the Clocktower comes in a big old box that looks like a great big book. And when you run the game, you open up that box, you take the two sides of it, you clip them together like they're a book. And then as you're running the game, as you're walking around, you'll have this, what we call the grimoire. And inside this grimoire is felt. It's all lined and backed with felt. And the game's tokens are also backed with felt. And you'll put the tokens inside the grimoire, and the two felt sides adhere to one another. And so you've got this basically living record of the game inside a big old book. And you can put reminder tokens on there, move things around, and you can keep track of what everyone is and what everyone's doing. I'm probably not doing it justice, but I would encourage anyone who's intrigued by this to look it up because it's really cool. And it's definitely the weirdest and most exciting thing about the physicality of our board game.
I'm just trying to see if I can find the pictures for it now. I can't.
I mean, there's one on the stream in the bottom left there. You can kind of see.
That's the actual box.
You kind of see it, yeah. But when it's opened up, it looks very cool. But yeah, you could go over to our website, bloodontheclocktower.com, and have a look at many pictures of our grimoire there if you like. Woo! Look at that. Well prepared. You're way more prepared than I am on my streams.
Your stream. streams are always well prepared. I mean, I'll say. Speaking of which, you obviously do stream for the Pandemonium. You have advertising that say you got a stream tomorrow night. In fact, haven't you?
Yeah, we
Every
run 3
Thursday.
streams a week, but I run them on Thursday evenings if you're in the UK, and Thursday afternoons if you're in the US. But yeah, you can head on over there and check us out tomorrow evening. We're currently running a script contest called the World Cup at the moment, where people create their own scripts. So that's like a combination of characters to play the game with, or more like a module or a set, I guess. But they create their own scripts, and then we have 2 go head-to-head, and the audience votes on which one they think is most exciting. So it's well worth swinging by for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah.
So the famous beginner script is Trouble Brewing, then. So do you want to talk to us about some of the typical characters in a Trouble Brewing game?
So yeah, Trouble Brewing is if you're playing or running the game for the first time, we highly recommend you run Trouble Brewing because it's the easiest one to understand and it's the easiest one to run. Trouble Brewing is pretty simple. There are 5 evil characters on it. One of them is the demon, and that's the evil team captain. And the good team wins if they kill that guy. And that's the guy who wakes up each night and decides who will be killed in the night. The other 4 evil characters are the demon's minions, and some number of them will be in the team supporting the demon. And those guys can do a myriad of things. One of them can poison people and cause their information to become false. One of them adds in some extra outsiders. One of them gets to look inside the box, inside the grimoire each night. And then there are a number of townsfolk and outsiders. The outsiders can be somewhat detrimental to the good team. One of them, the drunk, believes that they're a regular townsfolk, that they've got a powerful ability, and the storyteller treats them as though they've got that ability for the whole game, but all of their information will be false and all over the place because they're not. They're actually a drunk. But it's definitely the most well-balanced of the 3 core scripts, and in our testing, we found that it was more or less exactly 50% evil wins and good wins, and that's over many, many hundreds of games.
Yeah, so, certainly. I think it's one where evil perhaps win a bit more to begin with, just where they... I think new games where people are adapting to the changes from the normal social deduction metas that they've got in their groups. But yeah, Trouble Brewing is always a great laugh.
Yeah, you tend to find evil win a lot in beginner games simply because they benefit from the lack of game knowledge that everyone else has. Someone can make what would be a huge error in a group of experienced players. They could say, "Hey, they could lie and say, I'm this particular character, and I've done this, this, and this." And a veteran might hear that and say that that's not how that character works. You're lying. Whereas a group of beginners won't say that because they don't know that. And so evil can get away with a lot more. If you run a game of Trouble Brewing for a bunch of veterans, you find that evil have a really difficult time a lot of the time because those guys have played it so many times that they pretty much know every world that there is. And that's when it's time to move on to one of the more advanced scripts.
Yeah. So obviously, kickstarting 2018, 2019, then, the world ended. COVID. Yeah. And fortunately, we have this thing called the internet, and there's obviously the game basically seems to just naturally transition online. So
yeah,
and we have an interesting question from Arif. So, did you find there's elements of the game that work better online versus in person, and the other way around as well?
So I mean, it's a difficult one to say that because I think it's almost a question of personal preference. And I compare Blood on the Clocktower a lot to D&D because it's a comparison that a lot of people can understand, and the 2 games have a lot in common. At my table, when I run D&D, I've got 5 players. 4 of them use pen and paper to keep track of their character. One of them likes to use his mobile phone. There's neither of those is right or wrong, and both of them have pros and cons, right? Your mobile phone is quick, it does the calculation for you, it's easy, but unfortunately it can run out of battery. The screen's really small if you've got bad eyesight, etc., etc. Pen and paper, you can do whatever you want, you can rub things out, you can scribble anything, but it's laborious, it takes time, you have to do the adding up yourself. And I think the similarities, it's the same with Blood on the Clocktower in person or online. An in-person game, you can get away with a lot more than you can online. If we're playing online and I want to go have a private conversation with you, I have to announce that I want to talk to you privately, and then we have to very visibly go into a separate channel on Discord or Zoom or whatever, and everyone knows we're chatting privately. If I'm playing in person and I'm a demon and my minion's sat next to me, I'll just nudge him in the ribs and be like, oi, bluffs of this, this, and this. Tell everyone you're that. Problem solved. No one's seen us had a conversation. Nobody suspects anything. And those are the kind of things that you can do in person that you can't do online. But of course, online has the advantage of I can play with someone in Calcutta right now if I want to. I can play with my friends from uni who I haven't seen in person in a depressingly large amount of time. And I don't have to mess around with tokens and stuff like that. I can hand it all out digitally. So I think I wouldn't say that there are any elements that work inherently better or worse online or in person. I think it's all about personal preference. My personal preference is to play in person. I will always advocate for in-person play, but I like the tactility of physical tokens and stuff like that. And I like, being in a room with people and spending time with them. It's what I live for. But I wouldn't ever dream of saying, hey, this is better in person or this is objectively better in person, because I get that some people, they don't want to do that. They're not into that, and that's fine. That's fair enough for them.
No, that all makes perfect sense to me. I think it's, like you have our group of friends is not normally large enough to play social deduction games except in special events, yet suddenly, because we have people that, for one reason or another, we all met at uni, we're all gone to various places around the country and or abroad. And then you have the internet means that you can all suddenly just get together, and we're having Clocktower games at least once a month, and it's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I'm quite fortunate in that I live in an area where there's plenty of places to go play games. For as long as I've lived in Derby, there's always been a board game hub or a cafe or a bar. I live down the road from Warhammer World, basically, which means I can always get a game of Blood Bowl or something like that in. And when I go to places to play Blood on the Clocktower, I'm fortunate that a lot of people are often wanting to have a game with me or wanting to play with me. So I appreciate that my experience of getting a bunch of people IRL together to play the game is probably not typical. But yeah, I do very much enjoy playing it in person.
Yeah, so loads more great questions coming in from people. So we've got Josh asking, what's your favourite moments when playing or storytelling Blood on the Clocktower?
So I think, we could be here for 2 hours with me telling you stories, but I think the one that stands out the most to me was Ed and myself were running games at a UK convention called HandyCon, and there was a guy there, really nice guy. I wish I could remember what his name was. He was a really nice guy. He was a proper Cockney geezer sort of bloke. He even had the flat cap and everything, but he'd recently become blind. He was an adult man who'd become blind in his adulthood, and so but he loved board games prior to becoming blind. And he was saying, is there any way that I can play your game? It sounds really fun, but I want to play it. And so Ed and me thought, right, okay, how can we make this game work with a blind guy in it? So what we did is we ran a game and we paired him up with his friend, and told him that, you and your mate here, you're on the same team. There's actually a fabled character that can enable this. So we said, look, you two are on the same team, and you can tell each other what your characters are. And we sat them next to each other in the circle. And every time that something happened, Ed would say, this has happened, and then he'd describe it to the blind guy. He'd say, right, Jenny's nominated Alan. Okay, Jenny's at 12 o'clock from you, and Alan's at 7 o'clock. Okay, and then they would talk to each other, and this, that, and the other. And we actually made it so that this blind guy could play an entire game of Blood on the Clocktower. And there was this beautiful moment in it where another player accused him of being evil, and he did the accusation. The blind guy did his response. They then Ed started going around the circle, and the blind guy could tell that no one was putting their hands up. You could hear that no one's arms were moving, and he just went, bloody hell, have I gone deaf as well as blind? And it was just one of the most beautifully, perfect timing moments you've ever experienced. But it was just really heartwarming to see that we working together, we were able to make it so a blind guy could play our game, and he was enjoying it so much that he was quipping. So yeah, I think that's probably the best moment for me.
Yeah, that is a really, really good story. I absolutely love that. And I say I suppose you've just announced on Facebook his second print run. Any plans of doing a Braille version in the future then?
Well, to be honest with you, we've got an entire channel on our internal Slack dedicated to blind and deaf players, and it's something that we absolutely want to do. Unfortunately, we are a small indie team with a surprise hit game on our hands, so we're kind of inundated with stuff at the moment. There's a bunch of things that we've got on the horizon that are very important to us that need to get done before we can do anything like that. First of all, there's a lot of translations that need to be done. We need to translate the game into a bunch of languages. There's an app that we're currently developing that is kind of a priority for us because we want to be able to provide an app that gives players the entire functionality of running the game. The free one is awesome, obviously, and it's free, which is also awesome. But it's lacking a lot of functionality that we think is important in there. So there's a bunch of sort of things that have had to be prioritized over stuff like that. But it's definitely in our consciousness and something that we're regularly thinking about and discussing.
Yeah, so because you did reference it, I think big shout out to Brain for the work he did producing that community app. That is stunning what he's done and how it's helped develop the game. But yes,
I mean, Brain deserves. Yeah, he deserves a lot of credit because the success that the game has found on YouTube and Twitch is pretty much entirely because he developed that app. And Brain is the guy who is developing the official app for us as well. So there's some pedigree in there. Like, he knows what he's doing.
Oh, that is absolutely amazing. Great to see he's getting on board. So,
have you got a favourite character to play, Ben?
Which
apparently Mickey Dan has just asked exactly the same question. It's as if I knew.
Yes, Dan unfortunately can't join us tonight. He's fortunately feeling a little bit under the weather, but he's our resident social deduction. He likes social deduction. I think at least half of his collection is social deduction games.
Good taste there, Dan. I mean, my favorite. It's difficult to say because I think I've played as lots of different characters. And I don't think any of them mechanically jump out at me as, I really love the mechanics of that. But there's categories of characters or like kinds, how do I even describe this? There's kinds of games that you have that are particularly enjoyable for me. And those are the kinds of games where I can engage in the social side of the game a lot more than the mechanical side of the game. Because as I said, the mechanics aren't my strong suit, the social ones are. So if I like being an outsider because you aren't really expected to be the guy gathering all the info as an outsider. You can just be a go-between. You're not bothered really if you get killed most of the time because, who cares? I'm an outsider. The same thing goes for minions as well. I really enjoy being a minion. I enjoy providing a catalyst of misinformation that my demon can work with. I enjoy backing people up and supporting people. I'm kind of like that across most things. I think I generally like to play healers in MMOs and stuff like that, and I generally like to play supports when I play Dota and League of Legends and things like that. I've always been into I don't want the game resting on my shoulders. I want to provide you with the tools to be important. That's my kind of bag. So I particularly love being the butler. I really love being the baron because both of those guys don't have to do anything other than talk to people.
Ooh, butler. I think that could cause some controversy.
Yeah,
it's not everybody's favourite character.
Yeah, according to that one YouTube video, it's the most hated character in Blood on the Clocktower, which I very much enjoyed reading. But I don't hate it.
I definitely don't think it's the most hated. But I think that's possibly Josh's favourite. He's saying the evil twin is his favourite character, and I think
that's like pure social deduction right there, isn't it? Depending on what character the good twin is, it can really come down to which one of these two shifty blokes do you mistrust the least, which is my favourite. That's what I love about social deduction, that element right there. It's all good and well solving a puzzle, and I understand that for a lot of folks that's the main thing. But for me, staring someone in the eye and trying to convince them that something that is absolute nonsense is in fact ironclad truth, those are the moments that I live for.
Yeah, I had a really fun online game once where I was the evil twin. side of it, amnesia.
Oh wow!
I was having to invent complete rubbish, and I was actually fairly convincing till the end.
Did you win? Did you win the battle of hearts and minds in that game?
Eventually not, but it took us 6 days of trying to figure out the nonsense between them, the two of them, before we could actually. And in the end, it came down to almost the coin flip on it we have to resolve this now. It's not, we don't have the time to wait. And it was, and unfortunately,
it usually does.
That last day of information just felt slightly more on one side than the other, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, you know what? If you've caused people to genuinely question it, you've done your job as an evil twin.
Yeah, it's great. Got the coins coming in so thick and fast. It's great. Mr. Chris has finally managed to join us. His own little monster has clearly decided it's had enough for the day.
Hello. Greetings, everyone. Nice to meet you, Ben. Hello.
Yeah, you too, mate. Nice to meet you. You've got some pretty cool stuff on the shelf back there. Look at that paint set. You've been painting some Warhammer, Chris.
Yes and no.
You did have a former life, did our Chris? May or may not tell you about it.
I did have a former life, but I'm not here to talk to you about that.
No, all right then.
How's things? Like I say, apologies for being so late, but like George said, my little monster decided she did not want to go to bed, and I had to sit with her for nearly an hour, which is a first for the last couple of weeks. So,
well, there you go. So it's always the way, isn't it?
One question I do have, which is like from Natters, who we play games with, it's basically, are there any plans to have the purple Pandemonium Institute T-shirts to purchase?
Yes, this is something that we get asked all the time, and this is a great example of a thing that's been permanently on the back burner for like 2 years straight. We really the thing about getting a shop and merchandise together is it requires like a lot of work. It requires a lot of design and going around manufacturers and figuring out who's good enough to produce these goods and who's going to do it at a reasonable price and how much the shipping is going to cost and blah, 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 all these things. But I am really, really hopeful that, again, by the end of this year, we can get some merch out and about there, because I think T-shirts, we've talked about like notepads and deluxe town squares and stuff like that.
Oh my
God,
God,
I think T-shirts... Yeah, I know, right? A lot of people do take notes, don't they? This surprised me when before lockdown, I never saw anyone. In fact, I saw one guy with a notepad, and I remember him because he was the only guy I ever saw with a notepad. Post lockdown, you got all these people who were like sort of molded in the flames of online Clocktower and used to making notes and stuff on the web app. And then I see them all scribbling in the books and stuff, and it's very surprising to me because I never saw that before lockdown. But yeah, notepads would definitely be good. But T-shirts are easy, right? We can get T-shirts out there. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say they will be for sale sooner rather than later.
Excellent.
Because we will next expo, if not sooner, we will have also our own merch available for people to buy.
Oh, there you go. You should buy these guys' merch. It's definitely going to be better than our thrown together on the back burner T-shirts.
No.
They'll all be good. They'll all be good. Buy both.
Exactly.
So we do have another good question coming in. So we talked about Trouble Brewing. There's obviously the other two sets or base sets in the core script, Sex and Violence and Batman Rising. Do you have a favourite script to play?
I do indeed. My favourite is Bad Moon Rising. That's generally the least popular of the three scripts among most people. And I think a lot of times when people play Bad Moon Rising for the first time, they find it a little confusing or frustrating because it's not like the other two scripts where you've got a bunch of characters that do stuff and then things that those characters do renders verbal information that they can go and relay to other people. Bad Moon Rising is a script that's all about looking at some chaos and trying to make sense of it. Why did 4 people die last night? Why did that guy not die when we executed him? Why were there no deaths in the night? These kind of questions, and then you can reverse engineer the effects of things to try and figure out who's telling the truth. Well, this guy died because this guy did this thing with his ability, and then the demon killed 2 people because we know that the minion's this and the da-da-da-da-da. And I really like that kind of let's make some order from chaos. And you tend to find in games of Bad Moon Rising that there'll be not much going on, and then whoa, one night 5 people are dead, and then not much going on, and then some grand finale where you try and piece together all of this information. And it really lends itself well to, again, people who prefer the social side of things like myself, because there's not as much information flying around. You have to rely on instincts. So I love Bad Moon Rising, but I can totally understand why most folks prefer one of the other 2 for their favorite.
Yes, I suspect it's probably got something to do with a certain character on there called the Zomble.
Yeah, I love the Zomble.
Someone has said that, a certain character can just, disappear and die twice. We won't bring the entire comment up on screen because we are a family show, but thank you for expleting that out.
But yeah,
so I've got a question for you, and if the guys have already covered this while I've been gone, I apologize. But how would you describe Blood on the Clocktower for someone who not only has never seen it and never played it?
So Blood on the Clocktower is a supernatural murder mystery game where a small number of evil players try desperately to protect their demon, the team captain, from the view of a large number of good players. It's played in day and night phases, where during the day people can have free and open discussions and talk as much as they like, and during the night the storyteller, the GM, comes around and wakes each player up as they have their eyes closed and gives them the information that their role gets, or asks the evil players how they want to mess with the good players. There's no elimination. When you die, your role's not revealed. You still take part in discussion. You still win or lose with your team. And the dynamic storyteller role means that no 2 games are ever the same, because the evil players can poison good players, and good players can make good players drunk. And so the storyteller sometimes has to lie, has to wake up good guys and lie to them and feed them false information. And so what you end up happening is a game where you're never not playing. Death's not the end. Every game is completely different. And the storyteller is able to craft a narrative experience while still being bound by the rules.
There you go. That's an excellent description. I like that.
Cheers. I've had a bit of practice. I'm not going
to
lie.
say, I bet you have. I bet you have.
I'll say, question from a while ago. We got such a rhythm with the questions. I missed slightly, but from being asking, so what? Obviously, your role as community manager, what skills do you think make a good community manager?
That's a good question. That's a really good question, actually. So I'm not going to sit here and claim that I'm an expert community manager. I didn't go to community manager college. Don't have a degree in managing communities. I just kind of fell into the situation. But I think a good community manager is someone who, I think, first of all, you have to be passionate about the community that you're a part of, or at least I do anyway. I can't imagine doing what I do whilst not caring at all about the hobby or the community or the people that play it. I think that a genuine desire to want everyone to love the thing that you're selling is important. And to some degree, I think you have to kind of take it to heart a little bit when people don't, because caring about the game is inherently the same thing as caring about the community. Because if you love, it doesn't make any difference what it is. If it's football, if it's Magic the Gathering, if it's cricket, if it's cooking, every time more people engage in the hobby that you're passionate about, your hobby gets a little bit better. And I think wanting everybody who's in there to be having a good time, to be engaging, to feel represented, to feel heard and listened to, I think that is what makes a good community manager. And everything else, being able to use fancy words and stream on Twitch and all that other stuff, you can teach yourself that, but you can't teach yourself altruism when it comes to a community. I think a great example of this was there was an article that was written. I wish I could remember the guy's name, but he was one of the lead designers on Magic the Gathering, and this was a couple of years ago, when Magic the Gathering had introduced a trans character to their like roster of characters, and he wrote this brilliant article. Yeah. He wrote an amazing article where he was saying, look, it doesn't make any difference what you personally think about any group of people in the entire world. If you care about your hobby being good, or if you're a business and you want to sell things to people, cynically speaking, you want them to feel represented. You want them to feel like they can in some way associate with your product or with your hobby or with the game that you enjoy. So there's no reason at all to not include them and not represent them and not make them feel like they want to be a part of the community, that they can associate with people already in this community. Not caring about certain groups is antithetical to being a hobbyist, as far as I'm concerned. We're sorry, I do this all the time. I'm going off on wild tangents here, but yeah, that's what I think makes good community manager. All of that spew that I just said.
Yeah, and lovely follow-up question from Arif. So for you, what does a typical day in the life as your community manager bit involve?
Oh my god! This is
if there is such a thing.
So I mean, obviously, I have a schedule. So we stream on Thursdays. We mega stream on the first Saturday of each month. Generally speaking, I have to do a lot of the boring admin that many of you probably do. So I answer emails and I check messages and this, that, and the other. But I would say that the main chunk of my job is just managing our Twitch channel, managing our YouTube channel, liaising with people, with both players and business partners alike, and just making sure that there is actually a community there to be a part of. We're fortunate that the unofficial Discord server exists and that they've managed the community for us in that regard. And I think the same thing goes on for Reddit. I'm a big fan of the idea that a community should generally be run by members of that community rather than members of the business. So my job typically is to just be there as a point of contact for those super fans in the community that want to be heavily involved. But yeah, it's both regular and fluid. Like in September, I'm going to be going to 2 different countries over the course of that month as part of managing the community. But usually speaking, it's just keeping all the plates spinning as best I can.
Yeah, so wonderful question. You always talked about how Adam as Blampier is a bit of a star in his own right. I think it's probably fair to say you're developing your own stardom. Or piggybacking, have you got used to people coming and talking to you about the game yet?
No, I don't think I have, to be honest with you, and I don't think I ever will. It'll never stop blowing my mind that people know who I am, or that people sometimes watch me talk while they eat their dinner or something. That will never stop being strange to me, and it will never stop filling me with wonder. But I do absolutely love it because obviously it's nice for people to say, "Hey, I really like your work." That's very, very heartwarming and very flattering and very morale boosting and encouraging. But also, I do just genuinely like talking about the game. I like playing it. I like running it. I like talking about it. I love seeing other people's scripts and chatting with them about the scripts they've created. I love hearing people's stories of when they got slaughtered as the good team or smashed everyone to pieces as the grandmother or something like that. So I haven't got used to it. I doubt I ever will. And I hope I never do.
Excellent.
Exactly.
So if you had to pick anything apart from Blood on the Clocktower, what would your next favourite game be?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Beat me to the bullet there, George. I was going to ask that exact same question.
I like to have my fingers in a lot of pies, to be honest with you. I'm very passionate about pen and paper RPGs, and I always have been for a very long time. I currently run 2 RPGs a week and regularly do one-shots and stuff like that. I'm a particularly big fan of a somewhat obscure system called Genesis, which is by Fantasy Flight Games. And I will, I'm like a Jehovah's Witness for Genesis or something. If I see people talking about RPGs at conventions, I'll just sidle up to them and be like, "Can I tell you about Genesis? Have you heard about Genesis? I want to talk about my Lord and Savior Genesis." Like, I will just talk people's ears off about that system because I love it. Seriously, go check it out. I'm also a very big fan of Blood Bowl, which is a Games Workshop product. I play in a bunch of leagues. I run one. I play in tournaments regularly. I'm a huge Blood Bowl fan. So
Nice.
yeah, sorry, that's not a one thing answer. That's a lot of things, but I hope that kind of. I don't go to a restaurant and eat the same meal that I ate last time. That's my policy in most things in life, and I feel the same way about gaming. Really,
Variety is definitely the spice of life.
Exactly. Exactly. And I was just having a kind of a gander on the website, and I'm just going to bring it up on screen so everyone can see it. So anyone who's not what is going on? Kings keep coming up and
I'm
coming
fighting
off.
you.
Yeah, you're fighting.
Are you evil?
I know. It's like there's a monster amongst my midst. There's the little Ink the imp. That's what's going on. He's got into the spanners of the site.
Yeah, people were suspicious of me at the expo because of when I went to play some Blood on the Clocktower games in person. The fact that I had an imp on my t-shirt. Yeah, it's our badge of honor. It's our little mascot. Ink is ace. We love Ink. But no, I was having a look on the website, and you've got a great selection of content on there. But I just wanted to really emphasize the fact that you really do get the thought and feel of the game, but also of a sense of community, because you've got obviously, of course, all these places with Facebook groups, and of course the massive UK Facebook group. And as part of being the community manager, you're responsible for all of that, aren't you? Bless you.
Yeah, I certainly am, and it's an interesting task because it's like simultaneously hands-on and hands-off. The thing about a community is that it's a community. It runs itself, right? Yeah. That's the whole point of what a community is. So the idea of a community manager seems almost kind of antithetical to the concept of having a community. So I try and steer the boat a little bit occasionally, but I think mostly we're very fortunate in this community that the vast majority of the people who play it are super wholesome and really friendly. I think you have to be if your hobby is playing a game where you scream at each other and call each other liars for 90 minutes straight. I think you can't really be a nasty human being and successfully do that.
No, you certainly can't. And I think as part of my role in Diary of a Lincoln Geek is probably responsible for a big chunk of our community, and it's an enjoyable task. I don't know about you, but you come across so many lovely people in the community, and I think this is one thing that we found ourselves. Doing what we do, going and meeting lovely people at gaming conventions as we've done, and obviously chatting to yourselves. It's an absolute pleasure, and we look forward to doing it more and more and more.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, honestly, I sometimes just can't believe that this is what I spend my time doing. I feel there's an almost a very British attitude that your job should be a miserable grind that you hate. And so I feel like any minute now, someone's going to go, hang on a minute, he's enjoying himself. Get him now.
No, I know. This is an amazing question. I just saw this and go for it. If you could reskin Blood on the Clocktower and use another IP or theme,
the answer to this question could be a very, very important financial decision right now. If I say the right thing, we could get a serious license on the go. If I could reskin Blood on the Clocktower to use any other IP or theme, what would you choose?
Mm-hmm.
A
great question.
I'm going to go with Red Dwarf. Yeah, that's a personal pick for me, but I'm a huge Red Dwarf fan, and I reckon we've got stuff there, right? We've got like the storyteller can be Holly, and either Norman Lovett or oh god, I've forgotten her name now. This makes me the worst Red Dwarf fan in the world. Holly something. Anyway, yeah, the storyteller can be Holly, and then you can have like the outsiders can involve characters that actively don't help the team. So obviously Arnold Rimmer, Dave Lister's the Undertaker. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but yeah, seriously, BBC, get in touch.
Yeah,
Grant and Doug, let us know if you're up for this.
And I'm now just thinking of everybody's dad day.
Yeah.
How every game ends.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant! That's a great. That's great. I love the question and I love the answer. That was not where I saw you going, but good call. Good call. Oh,
So I think everybody has their first game story. What's yours, Ben?
What, for Clocktower or for games in
For
general?
Clocktower. Well, both. Let's do both.
Okay, well, my first ever game of Blood on the Clocktower was at the UK Games Expo 2018, I want to say. It was a 5-player teensyville because no one had heard of the game at the time. And I was the Baron, and I'm pretty sure I basically chose to tell people that I was the Saint. Now, bear in mind, I'd sat down and looked at this script for all of about 5 seconds before I was told to close my eyes. So when I opened them, I quickly scanned it for the one that I thought might cause the most disruption, because I understood that my death didn't matter. So I wanted to make myself look as shady as possible. So I chose to bluff as the Saint. And as it happened, another player was actually the Saint, but that deflected enough attention away from my demon that they were able to go through and win. So that was my first ever game of Clocktower, and I'm pretty pleased with it, to be honest with you.
That definitely sounds like a great first experience.
it does. It really
Brad
does.
on one of our Discord servers where we play Blood on the Clocktower, saying that in his first game, his own beloved killed him out of nowhere. Apparently.
Oh yes, I love it when you see couples play this game. They always go one of two ways. They either constantly accuse each other because they're absolutely convinced that they know whether or not their loved one is telling the truth.
Sully.
Yeah. Or one of them will be the sucker, and the other one will take them for a ride, and the sucker will be like, "Oh, there's no chance my beloved would be lying to me right now," and the other one will just utilize that and coast to victory.
Yeah.
Crazy.
One question from me. I know you've really helped me develop one of our earlier scripts. I say, great involvement with the community as always. If you could give one piece of advice to any new storyteller, what would it be? What do you think is the most important piece of advice to a new storyteller out there?
Don't panic. Take your time. That's my advice to a storyteller. If you're about to run your first ever game of Blood on the Clocktower, first of all, run Trouble Brewing. Don't try any of the complicated stuff. I know it's tempting. Yes, I know the Shabaloth looks hilarious. Yes, I'm aware that the Amnesiac sounds like a tantalizing opportunity to come up with your own mechanics. But please don't. Run a few games of Trouble Brewing at least first, because Trouble Brewing is a script that you can't mess up as long as you follow the order on the night sheet. As long as you look at each thing on that night sheet, and if that character's in play, just do what it says, then you can't mess it up. And take as long as you need. Don't worry about how long your night phase is. Just go character by character and do the thing, because your players aren't going to care if it takes a few more minutes for that night phase to happen. They're only going to care if you make an error that causes the game to have to stop in the middle. So take your time, don't panic, and most importantly, have fun, because you're essentially performing on a stage when you run Blood on the Clocktower, and your enthusiasm and you visibly having a good time is going to feed those players. They're going to have a good time if they can see you're having a good time. So take your time, don't panic, and have fun. That's Sorry, that's not one piece of advice. That's like 8, but there you go. You can have 7 for free.
Yeah, excellent. Rob sharing wonderful story from one of their first games, one which you probably ran for them, in fact.
Oh god, yeah. So that game, that particular game was I decided to organise a monthly game in Derby, and I wasn't expecting like 30-something people to show up. So the beginner game was like an 18-player game of Trouble Brewing or something, and we had a traveller called the Barista who can give someone 2 uses of their ability. So on night 2, the Barista gave the Slayer 2 shots. And then the Slayer shot the Imp, who died, and then they immediately shot the Scarlet Woman, who had just become the Imp, thus winning the game on day 2. After all that setup.
Bless.
Just allow you to get another game in.
Yeah.
It's all the better.
I think what I like as well is that you can play all of these complicated scripts, but then play as a group again with Trouble Brewing and kind of see how your group is kind of developed since that initial play of the beginner script?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's layers to this game, and when you first play Trouble Brewing, you take it at face value. These are all the things that the characters can do. Great, I'll do the thing that this character is obviously supposed to do. And then when you start moving up to the more complicated scripts, you start to learn that there are non-standard ways to play characters. There are interesting little things that you can do. And then when you go back to Trouble Brewing, you see all that other layer that you've since discovered, and you see new uses. Oh, hang on a minute. The spy doesn't just get to look inside the grimoire. They can nominate the Virgin and be executed. That's crazy. And you start to see all these other non-standard ways that you can play characters. And I think the biggest revelatory moment for most players is when they realize that it doesn't matter if you die. Like, if you get a bunch of fresh players in, they've only played Werewolf and Mafia and Town of Salem, they're all terrified of dying. Washerwoman, who's already done their ability, no, don't kill me, I'm good. But once players realize that death, because we are hardwired as gamers to think that death is game over, right? Which is bad. But if you watch a bunch of veterans play Blood on the Clocktower, they're queuing up to die. They can't throw themselves under the bus fast enough. No, I've done my thing. I don't want to be still alive. Cross me off the list. Kill me. And I think that's the big sort of threshold that most players eventually cross in this game, when they really can start to become a veteran, when they stop caring if they die. Unless you're the demon, of course. Please do care if you die, if you're the demon.
Yeah,
I know if I'm an outsider, I want to... Go ahead, George.
I remember one of my first games with a new group, I decided to test how nomination hungry they were just by going, I'm either the demon or the saint. The game is ending one way or another. Go for it.
What, you did that on day one?
Yeah.
Did they take the bait?
Yeah, they took the bait. They killed me, and unfortunately, that was the end to my drunken fortune telling.
Oh, right, okay. Yes, that last bit of information is the important bit, isn't it? Yeah. You were not actually the important saint.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just going to say that certainly if I'm an outsider and there's a Fangu on the script, I'm just like, kill me now!
Yes, there's two kinds of outsiders on a Fangu script. There's kill me now, or I'm not going to say anything, please attack me in the night. There is no middle ground in that.
Yeah, or your amazing string of three Twitch games of I'm going to say something and really hope I don't get jumped to, and every game I do.
Yeah, that was pretty nuts. I wondered if that thing would keep on going, but I don't think it's ever happened since then. So maybe it's time again. Yeah, if anyone who plays on stream is watching this and you're a demon and you think I'm an outsider, let's make it happen. Me and you will work together.
Excellent.
Love it. This is the act from George permanently gives him a layer of cover in mind. I think crazy. I just think it could be evil. Just to be George.
Chaos plays.
No, that is excellent. So yes, obviously with the Twitch stream, obviously you're playing tomorrow night. I'll get the link back up for everybody.
Yeah, come swing by. I also run a game on GenCon's Twitch channel, which is, I think, twitch.tv/GenConTV. I run that at 6 p.m. BST on a Thursday. So those are usually less complicated games and aimed more at beginners.
Yes, I know. I usually catch up a lot on the replay on YouTube. I cannot get enough of your content. I think it is awesome.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you.
So I think that probably brings us to a nice natural conclusion for today. So I will say thank you very much, Ben, for coming on and speaking to us, and for all of you out there for getting involved and being the awesome community that you are. And I say, if anyone wants to get involved in our community, don't forget you can come join our Discord. The link is coming down the bottom of the screen, and I'm sure Chris will be throwing it in the comments any minute now. And again, also do feel free to check out our website, with ALincolnGeek.com or DOALG.co.uk. You can find everything in there. We do all sorts. We review games, we do podcasts, we do the live show, obviously, and we are very soon launching our very own RPG resource database community space, which will be awesome. So watch this space to find out more on that. And until next time, remember to get your geek on.
Yep.
Bye, everybody.